Tommy tried to turn off the TV, but no matter how hard he struggled from morning until night, it was useless. By the end of the day, he finally accepted the truth. There was no escaping this cage. That was the moment he truly realized how powerless he was in front of this twisted couple. After that, he stopped acting rebellious. He became quieter, calmer, and even chose to apologize to Catherine.
I promise not to do it again. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me.
Even though Catherine accepted it, the punishment was not over yet. Chris pushed the TV back toward him again, and Tommy could feel his frustration rising. But just as he felt completely defeated, Catherine came in carrying a box. She had noticed that Tommy kept squinting at the screen and guessed that he was nearsighted. So she began trying different pairs of glasses on him, one after another. Slowly, Tommy's impatience faded. In its place came something unexpected. He was genuinely touched by her kindness, and that was the moment he started to change. This is Heal. As Tommy became more obedient, Chris gave him a little more freedom by extending the iron chain so he could reach the toilet next door. Catherine, worried that he might get bored, handed him a book. Tommy had no interest in reading, but one sharp look from Chris was enough to make him understand that he was never allowed to reject anything Catherine offered. He knew exactly what would happen if he disrespected her again. Then suddenly the doorbell rang upstairs. Chris immediately pulled out his electric baton, aimed it toward the chain, and signaled Catherine to go check. At the same time, he warned Tommy to stay completely silent. Thankfully, it was only a delivery person. Their son Jonathan had opened the front gate without permission, which was why the courier had come all the way in. Catherine immediately warned Jonathan never to open the gate like that again. Once the courier left, Chris even praised Tommy for staying still and not causing any trouble. Not long after that, Katrina, the new maid, came back to clean the house. Tommy asked if she had any cigarettes. She did not, so instead he took a pack of gum from her. And later on, that small pack of gum would become a very important part of his escape. By this point, Tommy had already lost track of how long he had been trapped in that house. But everything had started on one night outside a bar. Tommy was a troubled teenager. That night, he brought his girlfriend Gabby to meet up with their friends, who were waiting in front of the bar. As soon as they arrived, Tommy and the others started causing trouble. They took drugs, challenged a security guard, and eventually beat him up together. That same night, while heading home in a drunken state, Tommy was being followed by a car from behind. The vehicle kept its distance, moving quietly through the dark. Then just as Tommy collapsed on the road and lost consciousness, the car came to a stop. Somewhere else, Chris was waiting for someone. Not long after, Katrina arrived. She had come to apply for a job at his house. Before anything else, Chris made sure to ask about her background, especially whether she had any history of smoking or drug use. He made it clear that he did not want to hire anyone with addictions. Once everything checked out, Katrina was accepted. The next day, she arrived at the address Chris had given her. The house stood far away from other homes, isolated, with a long distance between the gate and the main building. Inside, she saw Catherine, who sat quietly, looking distant and withdrawn without saying a word. Chris opened the front door, revealing multiple locks installed on it. He immediately pointed out that Katrina had arrived 38 minutes earlier than agreed. Even though she explained that she only wanted to start work sooner, Chris insisted that he did not tolerate any deviation from what had been arranged. Once inside, he scanned her body using a metal detector to ensure she was not carrying anything dangerous. He also enforced strict rules, including a complete ban on using her phone during work hours. Her phone was taken and locked away in a safe. After that, Chris gave her a tour of the house. During it, she met their son Jonathan, who seemed friendly and well-behaved. Then Chris brought her down to the basement. That was where she saw Tommy, lying there with a chain around his neck. The sight shocked her. She immediately tried to leave, but Chris calmly explained that Tommy was sick and that they were only trying to help him recover. He assured her that no one in the house would be harmed. Even so, Katrina still wanted to walk away. That was when Chris stopped her and revealed that he had already looked into her past. Her previous job issues had put her at risk of deportation, making it difficult for her to find work anywhere else. He then pressured her further, implying that he could report her situation to immigration if she refused. With no real choice left, Katrina finally agreed to stay and work in the house. As Katrina began working, Chris gave her very specific instructions. Whenever she cleaned the basement, she was not allowed to respond to anything Tommy said. He explained that Tommy was under stress and could say abusive things. To make sure she felt safe, Chris even handed her defensive tools, including a stun device and pepper spray in case Tommy became dangerous. When the washing machine turned on, the noise woke Tommy up. The moment he saw a stranger, he became aggressive, shouting and demanding to be freed. But Katrina stayed silent, just as she had been told. Her silence only made Tommy more frustrated. After finishing her task for the day, Katrina left the house. According to her contract, she only worked twice a week, so she would not return for a few more days. Not long after, Chris came down with a pizza that Jonathan had made. But instead of eating it, Tommy threw it away in anger. He lashed out, filled with rage, even trying to attack Chris. The chain around his neck stopped him from getting any closer.
Dick.
Chris responded immediately. He used the electric baton to subdue Tommy, leaving him powerless. Then he brought a television closer and played footage from Tommy's past. The recording showed Tommy and his friends stealing a car and driving recklessly while drunk. They destroyed the vehicle and treated it like a game. Instead of feeling ashamed, Tommy seemed proud of what he had done. That reaction only made Chris more frustrated. Chris then began showing him more footage, including educational videos about reckless driving and how it often leads to fatal accidents. He even involved Jonathan in explaining the consequences, turning it into a lesson. Later that night, Tommy kept struggling against the chain, jumping and pulling in an attempt to break free. But he lost his balance and fell, accidentally spilling the container he used as a toilet. Hearing the noise, Chris and Catherine rushed downstairs to check on him. Tommy curled up on the ground, and as Chris approached, he suddenly lashed out. He threw his pants toward Catherine, then used the chain around his neck to try and strangle Chris. After a brief struggle, he managed to overpower Tommy once again. After regaining control, Chris went upstairs to grab a bag and brought it back down. On the way, Jonathan stopped him and asked about reading a comic that belonged to someone named Charlie. Chris allowed it, but only on one condition: Catherine must not find out. Down in the basement, Chris began accusing Tommy of being the kind of person who always plays the victim, acting as if the world is always against him. That only pushed Tommy further. He grew more emotional, lashing out with insults, even mocking Jonathan and threatening to harm him. That was the moment Chris lost control. Without hesitation, he sprayed pepper spray directly into Tommy's face, then started beating him with a baton, repeatedly calling him a bad kid.
We hate every single... Ow! Ow! What the fuck? Bad boy! Bad boy! Bad boy! Bad boy! Bad boy! Bad boy!
A few days later, Katrina returned to work. While she was cleaning, Tommy, still bruised and injured, began insulting her again. This time it went too far and Katrina ended up in tears. Seeing that, Chris immediately stepped in and demanded that Tommy apologize. At first, Tommy refused, but the moment Chris moved closer, the memory of what happened before was enough to break his resistance. He finally gave in. After that, Chris treated Tommy's injuries, calmly insisting that he was not a psychopath. That same night, at Jonathan's request, Chris brought Tommy upstairs into the family room. To prevent him from escaping, he installed a metal hook in the ceiling to secure the chain around Tommy's neck. Then Jonathan handed out popcorn, and for a moment, it almost felt like they were watching a movie together like a normal family. But in the middle of it, Tommy began to cry. He could not handle it. Soon after, he asked to be taken back down to the basement. Later that night, after returning Tommy downstairs, Chris and Catherine went back to their room. Catherine started talking about what had happened, and it reminded her of someone named Charlie. She admitted that she had even dreamed about him the night before, seeing him return in a much healthier state. Meanwhile, back in the basement, Tommy kept trying to free himself from the chain. The television continued playing educational videos about drug abuse, as if it was all meant to fix him. In the end, he broke down, realizing that there was no way out.
Everything that's around and invite progress.
The next day, Tommy finally gave in completely. He apologized and became noticeably calmer. As time passed, Chris installed a sliding track system on the ceiling, allowing Tommy to move between certain areas while still being restrained. One day, Catherine found cigarettes in Jonathan's pocket. As punishment, they forced him to smoke them all at once, leaving him struggling to breathe. Not long after, Katrina returned to work again. This time, Tommy apologized for his previous behavior. While she was working, he tried to reach one of her tools that had gotten stuck, but the chain around his neck was still too short. Upstairs, Chris was preparing food for him. By now, he had started to trust Tommy a little more, even allowing him to use metal utensils instead of plastic ones. When Chris came downstairs, he saw Tommy sitting calmly, reading. He tried to act friendly, but Tommy responded with sarcasm, pointing out that Chris used to be a police officer, then questioning what kind of officer would kidnap someone and lock them in a basement. Tommy begged to be set free, promising he would never report anything. But Chris ignored him, just like before, and played another recording. This time it showed Tommy and his friends bullying a young boy. They took his phone, smashed it, and even burned his face with a cigarette.
Scared, aren't you? You're all on your fucking own.
Watching it unfold, Tommy could not take it anymore. He finally broke and asked for it to stop. Later, Chris came down again and greeted him as if nothing had happened. Seeing that Tommy was starting to change, Chris offered a reward. Every time Tommy finished a book, he would get a beer. From that moment on, Tommy began to read constantly. Even while exercising, he kept a book with him. As time passed, they even celebrated his birthday. It felt strangely normal. After the candles were blown out and the cake was eaten, Chris asked for one thing in return. He prepared a cloth and a bottle of chloroform, making it clear what would happen next. Tommy hesitated, knowing how it would feel, but he had no choice. The next day, Tommy woke up in an open field, still chained. Not far from him, Chris and his family were having a picnic. Catherine believed his birthday should not be spent indoors. For a brief moment, everything felt like a real family. Tommy even played with Jonathan. But once it was over, he was put to sleep again, making sure he would not remember the way back.
Smells wonderfully sweet, doesn't it?
When he woke up again, he was no longer in the basement. Chris had started to trust him more, giving him his own room. A sliding track system was installed on the ceiling, allowing Tommy to move between rooms while still being restrained. At the end of each track, there were locks to keep him within certain limits. Catherine even attached a small bell to his neck so they could always hear where he was. Over time, the system expanded, giving Tommy access to almost the entire house. He could sit in the family room, read, play, or watch television. One night, Jonathan came into Tommy's room to play. Tommy noticed the desk and grew curious. He began to suspect that the room had belonged to someone else before him. When he asked about it, Jonathan gave a simple answer at first, but before he could say anything more, Chris suddenly called him away. The question was left hanging. At the same time, outside the house, Katrina was seen leaving, unaware that someone was watching her from a distance. The next day, Katrina returned to work as usual, but something felt off. Tommy noticed that she looked distant and unmotivated, like something was weighing on her. He tried to persuade her to reveal the password for the sliding track system, but she insisted she did not know it. That night, Katrina still had not gone home. When Catherine asked what was wrong, Katrina admitted that she felt like she was being followed. She suspected it was someone sent by her former employer who had finally tracked her down. She no longer felt safe going back and had nowhere else to go. Hearing that, Catherine offered to let her stay in the house for a while. With no better option, Katrina accepted. The next day, Chris returned from shopping. Tommy was sitting calmly, reading a book. Jonathan brought him a drink, while Catherine sat nearby with her own book. For a moment, everything felt warm, almost like a normal family. That night, Katrina noticed Chris preparing something outside. It turned out he had arranged a romantic dinner in the garden, an idea that had come from Tommy, hoping it would make Catherine happy again. For the first time in a long while, Catherine laughed freely. But as the atmosphere grew warmer, Tommy stood at a distance, watching quietly. Instead of feeling happy, he looked deeply sad, tears slowly falling as he observed them from afar. At that moment, Katrina entered the room. Tommy asked her to help him take something from a drawer. She hesitated at first, but eventually opened it and allowed him to try reaching inside. While Chris and Catherine were lost in their moment together, Tommy carefully pulled the drawer with his foot. He struggled to grab a long object from inside and managed to hide it in a flower vase. Around the same time, Jonathan came in, expressing how happy he was to finally see his parents smiling again. He felt grateful toward Tommy for making it happen. Not long after, Chris went to Tommy's room and thanked him as well for the idea. That was when Tommy asked the question that had been on his mind. Why him? At first, Chris did not understand, but Tommy clarified, asking why he had been chosen, why he was the one taken. He pointed out that someone else had lived in that room before, and that they had been treated the same way. Chris denied it at first, but when Tommy pushed further, asking what had happened to that person, Chris fell silent. The next day, Chris left the house. Not long after, a group of people arrived, looking for Katrina. Katrina and Catherine, who were outside cleaning, panicked and rushed back inside. But the group followed them in. Tommy tried to confront them, while Catherine demanded that they leave. Then unexpectedly, Katrina revealed the truth. The people were her family. Before things could escalate, she chose to leave with them. But just before she went, Katrina hugged Tommy and secretly gave him the password to unlock the sliding track. The people waiting outside grew irritated and in the chaos tightened the chain around Tommy's neck.
4201.
Not long after, Chris returned home. Catherine immediately told him everything that had happened, including the fact that Katrina was gone. Chris then went straight to Tommy's room and found him badly beaten. Tommy had been hurt while trying to protect Chris's family. Instead of anger, Chris felt proud. He saw it as proof that Tommy had changed. In his eyes, Tommy had finally become a real man. He even began to see himself as a father figure to him, promising that he would never forget what Tommy had done. To tighten security, Chris decided to install cameras and motion sensors throughout the house. In reality, it only meant more control over Tommy. He even asked Tommy to help set everything up, treating him as if they were working together like father and son. That night, Tommy could not sleep. He quietly got up and began trying to unlock the sliding track using the password Katrina had given him. One by one, he managed to open several locks, but there were too many. When he reached the final one, he pulled out the long object he had hidden earlier and used it to try to break free. But Chris heard something. Sensing that something was wrong, he rushed downstairs and quickly realized what was happening. Tommy was trying to escape. Chris immediately grabbed a gun and headed down. Tommy was ready. The moment Chris arrived, he hid and attacked him, then ran toward the door. But the door was secured with multiple locks, making it impossible to open quickly. With no other option left, Tommy pointed the gun at him. Chris tried to convince him that he had changed, that he had become a better person. At the same time, Catherine came downstairs and slowly approached Tommy. She tried to calm him down and reach for the gun, but Tommy refused. He made it clear that they were not his family. He had been locked in a basement, punished for disobedience, treated like something less than human. He refused to be controlled any longer. Catherine tried to persuade him, promising that he would not be chained that night. But Tommy did not back down. He wanted to go home. When Catherine brought up Jonathan, asking what would happen to him if Tommy left, Tommy admitted that Jonathan was a good kid, but in his eyes, the boy had already been influenced, just like the person who came before him. Tommy made it clear that he would not end up the same way. Realizing that he could no longer control the situation, Chris finally made a decision. He opened the door and allowed Tommy to leave. For him, it was the only way to prevent something worse from happening again. Catherine could not accept it. She nearly hurt herself in desperation, but Chris stopped her. And just like that, Tommy ran out of the house and into the night, finally escaping. On the way, Tommy suddenly collapsed. He was later found and taken to a police station. When questioned about his disappearance over the past few months, Tommy initially told the truth. He said he had been kidnapped by a family and forced to live as a replacement for someone else. But then, something changed. He quickly took it back and claimed that none of it was real. He said he had only been hallucinating and hiding away on his own to find peace. After finishing with the police, Tommy returned to the bar. There he found Gabby completely out of control, using drugs just like he used to. The next day, Tommy showed up with a large bag and met Gabby outside. She was waiting for him, curious about where they were going. But Tommy gave no clear answer. He simply asked her to let him drive. During the ride, Gabby admitted that she wanted to disappear. That was when Tommy stopped the car. Without hesitation, he used chloroform to knock her out. After that, he set their car on fire. Then, carrying Gabby with him, he continued on foot until he finally reached a familiar place, Chris's house. As soon as he arrived, Chris opened the gate and let him in. The whole family came out to greet him, and when they saw Tommy return, they smiled as if welcoming him back home. So the moral of the story is if your kidnappers start acting like your family, maybe don't get attached.